tune into that deep feeling sense. It's almost like you're becoming a meditator during sex, right? Which really is kind of the Jedi path of sexual kung fu. Hey, what's up guys? I'm Jonathan White. I'm here to help you master your sexual energy so you can manifest your ideal life. If you want to learn more about sexual and self-mastery, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to stay notified when I release new videos and go live. Make sure you get my free ejaculation control course through the link in the video description below. So in this video, I'm going to share what I would say is my #1 tip for men learning to experience non-ejaculatory orgasm. And this tip is basically to transition or at least expand from having solely a lustful kind of visual imagery based experience of sex and arousal and transition to more of a feeling. Sex is a feeling. Sex is feeling your body, right? And this may sound a bit abstract or something like that, but I'm gonna really break this down and explain what I really mean here, because this is something that when I really understood dramatically changed my experience of sex and orgasm. So I would say one of the biggest barriers that holds a lot of men back from having an expanded orgasmic experience is being stuck in both their heads in kind of mental imagery and thoughts about sex and like visual stimulation. Obviously this comes from porn a lot of the times, right? And this lust-driven approach to sex. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with these things, but when this solely occupies how you experience sex or self-pleasure, it really limits your sexual experience. I've had several men comment saying that basically when they're practicing solo cultivation, when they're stimulating themselves, they have a hard time ending the session without ejaculation. They often find that they feel kind of like angry or frustrated at the end of this sort of session, right? And I suspect that part of this is very much in line with what I'm talking about here, because I actually experienced this myself. I found that when it was just, me stimulating myself, I would often feel kind of edgy at the end of the session. Like I felt this like, almost like a bit of irritation or like this excessive fire that I hadn't quite reached completion in my sexual experience, right? And now at this time, as I reflect back on these experiences, I see that at the time, I still had this very kind of lust-driven, mental imagery-based experience of sex and sexual pleasure, meaning that I was constantly like seeing a sexual image in my mind. I'd stopped watching porn at the time, but I still was like focusing on sexual imagery in my mind and like having very lustful thoughts. And this is nothing for me about like morals, like, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or something like that. I'm not saying it's wrong to feel lust. It's definitely not, right? But it's when that becomes your sole experience of sex, when you lose a sense of feeling, when the heart becomes disconnected from your sexual center, right? Sex and love. We could say lust and love, heart and sexual center. When these become separated from each other, sex becomes a genital experience alone, and one that usually requires an explosive outward flow of energy to feel satisfied, right? So what I started to do both in sex and in solo cultivation practices was really focus on getting away from like mental imagery as far as sex, like fantasizing about body parts and how things looked and certain situations, and just fully focusing on my body. What am I feeling in the moment? Diving deeper into my feeling sense. Like, what does my spine feel like? What does my belly feel like? What does my chest feel like? And I started to realize how disconnected I was from my body. I would say that for me, naturally, it was easier for me to get into my body during sex with a partner. But I found that in my self-cultivation sessions, I was almost exclusively just like, again, just kind of fantasizing and trying to build this arousal without really feeling what was actually happening in my body. And what I was doing was over-engaging kind of both my head and my sexual center itself. So the energy was kind of getting stuck here. And so what I started to do was release any mental imagery, release any thought about sex, and just feel completely what's happening in my body. Maybe in the beginning, I would use a bit of fantasy just because sometimes, again, in a self-stimulation setting, it's not always easy to get super aroused right away, right? So in the beginning, I would use maybe a bit of fantasy, but then once I was aroused, I would release any fantasy and just focus on my body, focus on keeping my breath slow and deep, focus on feeling my entire body and just like really, really deeply feeling and relaxing and noticing how there was a tendency for me to want to tense up, to intensify the sensitivity of my penis, like squeezing the pelvic floor, which yes, would increase the sensitivity, but it would draw me more towards ejaculatory orgasm. So I would completely relax whenever I started tensing up, breathing deeply, making sound, because this starts to break your old habits. Our old masturbation habits are probably, we're sitting stiffly on a chair, fist pumping away, pelvic floor is tense, our whole body's tense, our mind's tense. We're just like, oh, sexual imagery, boobies, body parts. This pulls you out of your body. And so this new kind of paradigm for myself of just deeply feeling into my body, like just feeling, can I feel this sexual pleasure in my spine. It was almost like, as I started to do this, it was like my spine became an extension of my penis. I can only explain as like there was sex happening up my spine. It felt very intense, right? My spine became an erogenous zone and it started to transfer over to my whole body. Because I wasn't focused on visuals and lustful thoughts and feelings, I was just feeling my body, really allowing myself to feel. And I think most importantly, opening up my heart center. This is the space that a lot of men are very closed in. Because as men in this world, we often experience wounds in our childhood or maybe our teenage years. You know, the first girl you fell in love with broke your heart, she left you for another man, something like this happened in your life. And so you learn to protect yourself from these situations by closing down your heart, saying, well, I don't feel anything, I'm the tough macho guy, you know, you can't make me feel anything. And yes, this can help us in certain situations, but sexually it locks us down and it removes our feeling sense. So we get stuck in our genitals during sex and we can only ejaculate to feel completion. And what I started to experiment with during sex was, because there's a tendency, you know, during lovemaking, it's exciting, your partner's body, all these things are happening. And so obviously there's visual stimulation, there's sounds happening. And if you're not careful, those things can kind of pull you out of your own body and your experience and just really make your arousal level grow out of control, right? And so what I found was integrating the same thing into sex, where just feeling my body deeply, like, okay, this is happening out here, but not exactly detaching myself from it, just not being so like hyper focused on, for example, the eyes. Again, men are very, very visual when it comes to sex. You know, we like to look at body parts and things like that, which is fine. But when you want to expand your ability to control your arousal to higher levels without ejaculating and have expanded orgasms, deepening your feeling sense within your body, simply noticing, what am I feeling? Not just in the penis, but my whole body. Like, okay, I noticed that I'm doing this weird tension thing. You know, I'm starting to tense up my chest and my belly. So I relax that. It really is about releasing blockages in the body, because tension and blockages go hand in hand. When you have strong tension patterns, the energy is often getting stuck there. Like if your pelvic floor is squeezing the whole time you're having sex, you're creating a blockage there. The sexual energy sometimes can't move through that. It gets kind of bottlenecked in the penis and it has to ejaculate out, right? So feeling throughout the body, first of all, to eliminate tension, obviously you need, you know, a little bit of tension for the movements you may be doing, but beyond that, unnecessary tension, this is the big thing, right? Releasing, relaxing, breathing deeply, and feeling. It's like, can you get your whole body to become an erogenous zone just by really becoming hypersensitive to what's happened? So to kind of sum up what I've been sharing in this video is getting away from like being a solely visually stimulated person, certain images about sex and body parts. I challenge you to let go of that a little bit. Not saying you can never ever do it again or you won't be able to come back to it, but try to transition out of that for a period of time to where you're just going to feel your body, not have excessive fantasy or visual stimulation or lustful thoughts and feelings. Try to open up your feeling sense, open up your heart, a feeling of love, self-love for yourself, love for your partner, respect, right? And just really feel your whole body as an integrated unit. Feel how the arousal affects your entire body. Tune into that deep feeling sense. It's almost like you're becoming a meditator during sex, right? Which really is kind of the Jedi path to sexual kung fu. And it may take some time for you to transition into this. You know, our sexual habits weren't created overnight. They were often created over years and years. So they're probably not going to change overnight. But the more you start to add these principles into your practice, the more you will start to expand your sense of orgasm and your feeling of deep embodied sexual pleasure in a sustainable and enjoyable way. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and leave a comment below. Have a great day, my friends.